Welcome to the Conscious Publicist Podcast, a space where thoughts become ideas to advocate for a more conscious human experience in the media. Our thoughts and ideas inspire action, and the most notable leaders and organizations have transformed thoughts and ideas into global initiatives that have impacted the lives of millions. My name is Ashley Graham, and as a woman-owned business founder and publicist, I guide leaders, visionaries, and creators in discovering their conscious media voice and methodologies that inspire connection, community, and impact through aligned media channels. In this podcast, we'll dive into public relations, thought leadership, business, and entrepreneurship, all through the lens of being a conscious human being. I'll take you behind the scenes into the habits, thoughts, and modalities that have helped leaders shift past paradigms of limiting beliefs, comparison, and self-doubt to show up for themselves to become the subject matter experts they were called to be. Subscribe to the show on Apple or Spotify and join us on this journey of awakening the conscious, enlightened leader within you. Sustainability has really been top of mind for me, which makes me very excited to introduce you to today's guest. Desiree is the founder of Voes Co, a global vegan footwear brand on a mission to revolutionize fashion with next-generation materials, proving that style, comfort, and sustainability can coexist without compromise. As a passionate vegan advocate since 2008, Desiree is on a mission to challenge the status quo, amplifying conscious consumerism and inspiring others to create lasting change through conscious behavior. She recently authored Consciously Chic, a playbook for ethical fashion, and took the stage at the Vegan Women's Summit to discuss the future of fashion beyond plastic. Desiree's insight, experience, and unwavering commitment to impact make her a guest you don't want to miss. Desiree and I clicked instantly during our pre-podcast chat, and that energy really carried right into this conversation. Desiree opens up about her 17-year journey in conscious living and how she turned her own frustration with finding stylish vegan footwear into a mission-driven brand. Through this dialogue, we get real about the challenges of mindful shopping in a world that's designed for the one-click buying mindset, and share some personal strategies that have worked for both of us. Whether you've been thinking about making more intentional buying choices, or if you're already deep in your sustainability journey, I think you'll find yourself nodding along with this heart-to-heart conversation. Let's dive in. Desiree, it is such an honor to have you in this space with me today. I'm very excited for the audience to learn more about you and Voes Co. I would love to ask you, what story are you really passionate about bringing to the world?
Wow, start off with a bang. Well, hi, Ashley. Yes, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the Conscious Publicist podcast. This conversation is so important. I feel like it's very timely as well with the way the world has been going. But for me, first and foremost, my biggest passion is taking care of the animals. I feel like if we had more compassion and kindness towards innocent creatures like animals, can you imagine the state of the world we would be in with our compassion towards each other, our compassion towards the planet? And so for me, as a conscious woman following a vegan lifestyle, my pain point was always shoes and designer shoes. So I've taken my passion to create designer footwear that are shoes that are more ethically made and more sustainably made through thoughtful materials and thoughtful design.
I love that. For those who are tuning in, Desiree and I actually had an incredible connection call to talk about the narrative of today, but then also to really get that inside look from her and her innovation behind the brand. We naturally evolved into your passion and your drive for also educating around conscious fashion, conscious accessorizing, and then also how that can have a lasting impact. So I know we're jumping in, but I would really love to get to that part of this conversation because as we were speaking, we were bringing awareness that sometimes we want to make better, more conscious decisions, but we don't know where to start. We also can think that we have to dive right in and make all of these changes immediately, which sometimes it can be the smallest decision that we make to get us started. So I would love if you could guide the audience there around your wisdom of making those choices and the stepping stones that you would take.
Yeah, sure. I had this like awakening in 2008. So it's been almost 17 years that I've been following this lifestyle and this journey and learning more and becoming more and more educated myself. And so for anybody at any point where they're at in the journey, it is a long-term lifestyle and a mindset. And so kudos to anybody. And again, with the name of your podcast, Conscious, I think about being conscious. It's so easy to be ignorant, or it was easier before social media. Now it's a lot harder to actually be ignorant and avoid knowing certain things because the information it's either in our feeds, it's in documentaries, it's the activists. Like we can't avoid knowing about animal agriculture and what it's done to the planet and what it's doing to the planet. And I think for me, first I went vegan for the animals because I did learn about the horrifying process that animals go through to become food. And then around 2015, when I watched Cowspiracy, it was a reinvestment in the lifestyle going vegan for the environment because I also understood what animal agriculture was doing to the environment. And so at that time was the movement to like with climate change and really feeling like it's an emergency, like we are in a climate emergency and really feeling like the weight of the world. And I think for me for a long time I struggled because it's like you feel like it's all or nothing almost. Like you said, you feel so much weight and pressure to figure out, okay, what am I buying or not buying? What am I eating or not eating? What am I driving? Like everything in your life you start to look at. I always often say the most sustainable thing we can do is buy nothing at all. But we are here to be human and enjoy this human experience, which includes good food, fashion, driving a vehicle, all these fun things and advancements that we've made. And so I think, again, going back to having a conscious mindset, being super mindful and understanding that we are powerful as individuals because literally every single one of us, the decisions that we make, they add up volume wise, like 8 times 8 billion. And so if we think about our own conscious decisions and knowing that everything we buy or consume has an end of life and trying to be more mindful before we hit buy or purchase or consume something to take like an extra moment and think about what does the end of life of this product look like? So again, if it's a pair of shoes, like, A, do I really need another pair of shoes? And if you do, and they're fabulous, then great. There's no guilt in buying them. But then also maybe think, is this the best option potentially for the planet? How long am I going to have these shoes for? What's going to happen when I'm done with these shoes? And really, I think it's the conscious approach is being more mindful and taking a few steps back before that instant gratification of hitting the click. Now you can tap your phone and like purchasing is so easy. And so it's about slowing down consumption and having that like thought process before grab onto things.
I immediately thought of the shop app, as you were saying, that it's so easy to click buy. I will tell you, I do love how they track and limit the amount of emissions that are through shipping and sending. But when it comes to consumer mindset being so easy to buy through that app, it's almost gotten me a couple of times clicking before actually thinking about what it is that I'm buying, why I'm buying it, and if that's ultimately going to serve a purpose. Another point that I was going to bring up was you got me thinking about this mentality that I started adapting probably within the last 5 to 8 years, but it was this practice that if you find something that you like or that you're attracted to, hold off on buying it. And if you start thinking about it for either a week or 2 week or up to a month at that point, that is the trigger and the signal that it's worth buying because it's taking up so much more space as to how you would integrate it into your life, integrate it into your home, or whatever purpose it fulfills. Then it's worthwhile than mindlessly buying or buying out of urgency or I'm blanking on the word, but the impulse buying.
The instant gratification, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think again, I think a lot of the underlying message of this conversation was about like education and mindset and ultimately I think behavior. And so if you can change, if people can change like that one, it's a big one, but it's a behavior change. It's an okay, instead of tapping my phone, hitting shop, give yourself 24 hours. Just say, I'm going to wait 24 hours. And then maybe after you do that for a while and it starts to feel good, then maybe you add a week. Okay, I'm going to give myself a week before I make a purchase like that. And then maybe it becomes a month or whatever. But I think it's like the baby steps. It's what are the little habits that we can insert into our lives that help us be more mindful. And I think a bigger macro level of this conversation, again, about being conscious is also like we consume to fill voids in our hearts, in our lives, in our souls. And so I think the extra step too, if you want to get like super deep, is again, like why? What is this? Is this filling a void? Is there something I should maybe address instead of hitting the click button and things like that? And so but I think starting small with like little behavior shifts, give yourself 24 hours before you buy something and see if that's still like really resonating. I put into place a behavior change many years ago with clothes because I've always wanted to have a very more like minimalist lifestyle and I did not enjoy having like oodles and oodles of clothes and having my closet be unorganized. And so I said to myself, anytime I want to buy a new piece of clothing, I will have to replace something that I already own. And so that it's like one in, one out. You know what I mean? But also thinking of end of life. We had a whole conversation, I think, about like thrifting before when we think, okay, well, I'll give a garment away and feel good about that. But we know that's also not always a really positive solution either. But at least thinking of, okay, if I'm buying something new, what am I getting rid of and what's happening with the end of life of something else that I need to make space for this new thing.
For those who might be curious, I should have recorded our first conversation because it was so good. There were so many anchor points to that conversation, and I want to make sure I bring some of that to life here because it was so good. But you and we again talked about the life cycle of things and as well as where to donate and how to donate if you are looking for a new home. What I had shared from personal experience, and don't fault me for this, but I've become a little bit of a hoarder when it comes to clothing because I do not know exactly where those clothes are going to end up. And I'd rather them take space in my home than end up in a landfill that, causes more damage than needs to be done. So I think piggybacking off of what you were saying, trying to maybe integrate some more minimalist thinking when it comes to clothing and how we buy and shop. But I also think that there's a mindset of when you're shopping to think about the quality of the item, how you're able to take care of it, and almost doing a little bit of the up leg before that card even swipes to purchase that thing that you can integrate as well. So I'm curious from you, from a consumer standpoint, if you have any ideologies or thought processes that you go through before you actually buy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like we touched on some of the behavior shifts of giving yourself time before the instant gratification purchases. The other one is knowing who you're buying from. I mean, I obviously am a woman. I have an independently owned brand and in the fashion industry, and I also have an independently owned food brand. And so over the years of being a founder of these two brands, I have met so many women who have their own independently created brand, independently funded brand that is heart led, mission driven. And they literally are trying to do good in the world, whether it be with clean skincare or organic food. My motto is to really try to support as many independent brands as I can and paying more if I have to, because I feel if instead of buying 10 cheap things, I would rather buy one or two higher quality, more expensive potentially items. And maybe the quality is not even higher, but they're more expensive because they're independently funded. They're not producing at scale. They don't have economies of scale to produce and to make their garments cheaper or their food cheaper. Understanding how an item ends at the retail price is 5 times more than the actual cost of that good. And so you might look at the price of something and think that's so expensive, but the actual amount of profit or money that's going back to the brand owner is significantly less because of all the different channels. But all that to say is, I think less is more. So being mindful again with my food brand, like we had snacks that were a lot higher price, but I had conversations with people. It's, well, if you could buy one bag of organically made, independently owned snacks and have your snacks once or twice a week versus every single day or every other day, then maybe that's like a consumer shift that you can make that really helps to support independent brands and helps to move the needle forward. Because I always say that even if you're not an investor in a company, you are a stakeholder and an investor in a brand every time you buy a product owned by a woman-owned business or a woman-led business. My footwear is not perfect, but every time we make a sale, every time we have a customer supporting our brand, it means that the longer we can stay in business and the more we can help move the movement forward, ultimately to a place where potentially maybe our shoes will be able to be planted in your backyard when you're done with that. But it takes the investment from the public, from consumers, to make those like behavior shifts and changes in their lifestyle so that the money is flowing. It's the cliche. Every time you make a purchase, you are voting with your dollars in the type of the world that you want to see. And so do you want to put your money towards a brand that is literally destroying the planet? Or do you want to put your money towards a brand backed by a conscious person who is doing everything they can to try to make the world a healthier place? And so you always have those options too.
I was over here smirking as you said, you vote with your dollar because you and I were already there. I was thinking every single time we buy or we spend, we are entering into a contract in some way with who we're buying from. It's a relationship. Even if it's a brand with a label and you don't know necessarily the founders or the people behind it, it's still a relationship that's being created because that item or that product or even that service becomes a part of your daily life. And there's energy that is spent, there's reflection, there's use, there's anything and everything is taking place in that relationship from the minute that you hit pay. And I think the more that we can bring awareness to the relationships that we are entering into, the better that I think we feel as consumers. But we ultimately know, again, where our money is going and if it's going to the places that we would proudly feel or feel proud supporting. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the first mindset behavior change of giving yourself 24 hours. What if you gave yourself 24 hours before you bought something? What if within that 24 hours you spent less than 2 minutes and either find that brand or company's website, find their social profile, and even energetically or like immediately get a vibe of, does this feel like something I want to support? Or am I contributing to either fast fashion or large scale consumption? And so again, I don't want it to become too overwhelming, but literally take 24 hours. Within that 24 hours, spend a minute or two to do a quick Google search, find out if that resonates with you. And then if yes, then great. And if not, then maybe there's another alternative option. And you realize you really want a pair of white sneakers, but maybe there's a better option for your white sneakers, a better brand. Like your dollar is going to go further. And having that thoughtfulness, I think really on a large scale, if we all did it, would go such a long way.
I absolutely agree. I mean, if you take one person and put them against this change, they can only get so far. But when you triple and you continue to bring more and more people into the collective experience, well, more people equals masses, and masses is what really can push the needle forward in so many ways.
100% agree. And I think even for your own personal wellness, I think you'll feel so much better. Again, having some mindfulness, having some consciousness, taking some thoughtfulness into your purchases, maybe not having so many things, working on yourself so that you're not like consuming with trying to fill voids wherever they might be. And but yeah, I get it. It's tough. And like I said, these companies that you can get things within a few hours of even purchasing them or the next day, they've really made it really tough to change. That's a behavior that we've created for ourselves, right? And so it's like the hardest part is these little habits, these behavior change. So maybe find your best friend and do a little accountability challenge for 1 month and say, okay, I'm not going to buy anything for the next month without at least taking 24 hours to think about it and see what happens.
I love that. And that actually sets me up perfectly for how I wanted to shift the conversation. As I was mentioning, even behind a label of a brand, there's people, there's passion, there's a reason as to why it exists in the first place. I would love to shift the conversation to Voes Co. Obviously, you're very passionate about creating change in this way that you are through education, but also bringing better materials to have longevity with products. I think you have such an innovative product. I would love to have you share a little bit about the shoes and the boots that you have, but then also about how you create a relationship with those who trust in your brand and buy into your brand that ultimately creates a community. Because as someone like me looking from the outside, I can see that you are building a community through your story, through your mission and your message. So I would love for you to share your wisdom there and tell us anything and everything about Voes Co.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I did bring some show and tell. So that's why I keep referencing shoes because they're right in front of me. But I created Chelsea boots because I'm from Vancouver, Canada. And so I really wanted a pair of shoes, boots that I could wear 300 days a year. And Chelsea boots was my biggest love. And so, yeah, I solved my own problem because, like I mentioned, I think earlier that I was vegan. I went vegan for the animals. I stopped eating meat and wearing leather. And I could not find designer footwear not made of leather or suede. And so, for the longest time, I had one shoe store that I could shop at, and it was a cheap shoe store because all of their shoes were by default vegan because they were made with synthetic petroleum-based materials like PU or PVC. I also had this need that I really wanted a brand to wear to represent my values. And I didn't want to show up to dinner with like t-shirts that said don't eat animals, but I want a brand or an emblem that I could wear. And so I realized there's no global iconic brand that represents veganism. And so I had the name Voes Co, V for veganism and the OES from shoes. And I thought, okay, I'm going to create a global iconic vegan brand with designer footwear. And so we started with the Chelsea boot, and then recently we launched our little white sneaker. And again, talking about mindfulness, I don't want a website with 1,000 different pairs of shoes in different styles and colors, and it's overwhelming. I really wanted to start with basics that I need in my own life that I could wear like every day or every other day. So really focus on like timeless designs that will last, not seasonal, but like years or even decades. And luckily, the innovation in the vegan space has come so far. So a lot of people obviously had the same thoughts that I did, that we must be able to do better than plastic. And so one of the first materials that came out was the cactus leather. And when I got swatches of the cactus leather, I realized I could make really nice designer shoes, high quality, breathable shoes, comfortable shoes with the cactus leather. So right now our collection is made with cactus leather, and our sneakers that I showed are, this is corn leather. So again, really durable, super high quality, very comfortable, very light. And yeah, so designer footwear made with plants. Ultimately, like again, as we grow, as we innovate, we can do even better and better with the materials. And in terms of community, I guess that's what I was talking about earlier with like women-owned, heart-led, values-driven brands. For me, it's natural. I don't have to pretend to be vegan to connect with people that are vegan or pretend to be conscious or mindful, because I am. And so it's like my natural community. So for the last couple of years, I've attended the Vegan Women Summit and met so many women, especially that are either already vegan, or obviously if they're at the Vegan Women Summit, they're extremely conscious and interested in the lifestyle and making choices that are better for animals and the planet. And yeah, I think naturally I'm an entrepreneur. Naturally, I'm a marketing person. And so for me, storytelling has always been like one of my fortes. And thankfully, meeting people like you that are bringing these conversations mainstream with podcasts and being super open to opportunities, meeting Cassandra McClure, who runs the Clean Living Collective, meeting again, all these other women founders, female-led brands. And so thank you for saying that, because all the time I feel like I'm not reaching enough people. I want to build my community, and like, where are my people? So it's grateful that we have come this far in the last few years and have been able to build this community, because it's my heart. Voes Co is the walking version of my heart, and it feels very vulnerable at times because I'm really putting myself out there, but it's also very rewarding.
We love the sensitive souls here. So we love that heart is walking around waiting to attract the right people. Even if we can't see it as such, I feel that our stories, what we're creating and what we're sharing will always be community oriented and community driven. Because all it takes, speaking to how you build masses, is it takes a few people to really align on some really fundamental core pieces. And then you continue to expand, you continue to attract more. And so I think that's one of the most beautiful things about either having a product based business or even having a platform like a podcast is you start small, but if you continue to nurture it with that heart at the center, it's going to continue to get bigger and better and attract even more people who can help push the message forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, one of the biggest challenges is remembering it's the long game. In a world of instant gratification, we want an overnight community. I want to be the global brand. And luckily, I mean, I'm grateful because obviously, like we've said the word journey a bunch of times already, but it is a journey. And for me, I feel like this journey is a constant reminder because like it hasn't been easy. You know what I mean? Like I've had setbacks, we've had problems in manufacturing, we've had so many things, and I get reminded in those moments of like, why I don't have to do this. Like, why am I even doing this? But the answer always comes back to me is I can't not do this. And if I'm lucky enough, like this will be my legacy. Like I'm in my 40s. This could be like the next 20, 30 years of my life. And if I get to do this and really build my community over the next 10, 20, 30 years, then that could be really remarkable because it's a long-term commitment. And again, luckily, because these are my values, it's rewarding and empowering the more I connect with and build my community. I have met, oh my goodness, like phenomenal people. I started this YouTube masterclass and I got a bunch of negative comments, which was actually fun because I knew that it was helping drive the algorithm. But then I had this one stranger comment, share my video on her Facebook, and she added me as a friend on Facebook and we become friends. I never expected to make a friend from YouTube that saw my video, commented on my video, and shared it. And then even my customers, some people that have bought shoes and then they put a picture up and they tag and I respond to our Instagram and then we become friends. We're on email every day. You know what I mean? It's really rewarding in that sense.
I love that. You never know who you're going to meet online. Never.
Yeah,
And
never.
sometimes it really takes having the courage and the drive to continue to maybe push through the silence or push through the crickets or push through the moments where you feel stagnant because I think people still are listening, people still see it. It takes a little bit of momentum or it takes a moment of connection to really kind of hit the it needs to hit. For some reason, this is reminding me about a video that I saw. I believe it was on Instagram, and it was of a 90 something year old woman who was an advocate. I can't remember exactly what she was an advocate or activist behind, but the interviewer who was interviewing her had asked, given that what you're advocating for is still a work in progress, would you go back and change anything about the decisions that you made? She's like, if I was still given the time, I would continue to do this for another 90 something years because it's what drove me. It's what I was passionate about. And it's because I truly believe that by the work that I put into it, I created change in the ways that I could. And I just thought that that was so powerful. I actually started like tearing up when I watched it because when you are advocating for something that some people might not really understand because it doesn't directly affect their experience yet, or it might not ever directly connect with their experience, you have to continue to live in the heart and the soul space of that and hope that it will change, that the needle will be pushed forward. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of mastery to do that. And so I always have this deep appreciation for people who are going against the norm because they see this picture and they see through this lens that others maybe not be, they might not be there yet, but they could. And then it serves a more collective, greater impact than what we might see at that point in time.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I feel like that could be hopefully words that I will share as well when I'm 80 and be like, I wish I had another 80 years to do this. But yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people are at too, right? You want to like at certain point in your life, you realize that it's not about money, it's not about ego, it's not about I don't know, all these things again that are unfulfilling, which is why you probably shop or drink or eat or whatever, because you're not doing meaningful work. And so for me, it's, yeah, this feels really meaningful. And it feels like at times where it is a bit frustrating because I do honestly feel like I'm like a little bit ahead of our time. Again, it feels like two steps forwards, three steps backwards sometimes, but I can't not like you have to it's meaningful work. And again, the people that I'm meeting through this journey have been such remarkable life-changing types of relationships, and it's that part alone is so worthwhile and so fulfilling.
Yeah, community and the relationships. I mean, that is the heart of everything, even for
Mm-hmm.
the heart and the soul of this podcast. The old model of the podcast was to speak on limiting beliefs and how it's easy for leaders or entrepreneurs, they get stuck in the comparison trap, which I feel to a degree we are talking about because, as you said, you take two steps forward, but then feel like you're going three steps backward. It's like the entrepreneur journey. You feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
thriving, and then all of a sudden something happens and you feel like you're back at square one. I think advocacy is very much that as well. We're all human. We have limiting beliefs. We have experiences that really strike a chord and they cause us to go back and reflect and see what we need to do differently or whatever the circumstances may be. But if you have a mission, which my mission is to give a platform for others to share their story and their message and the voice that needs to be told for change in so many ways. If you go back to the heart and back to the soul, change is going to happen. It takes some time. It takes some
Yeah.
time.
It's the ripple effect too, right? I've shared this a few times, but one of the books that really impacted me in my 20s was I read the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And a part of that book talks about having your own personal mission statement, knowing your own personal values. And I think going through that and knowing what my values are and really diving more into knowing myself and my mission, I think that's when things started to pivot for me in my life. Knowing my values helped me attract opportunities that aligned with my values. And so it's the ripple effect. Like as soon as you are able to pinpoint that and then attract the opportunities that come in, and then that is a catalyst for growth, and then you get more and more of it. And so which kind of ties everything back because I feel like you people can only be mindful and conscious to the capacity that they really know and understand themselves. And so I feel like that's like the first step towards consciousness and mindfulness is like doing your own audit, like really knowing yourself. Do you know your values? What do you care about? And then do your actions, the things that you buy and consume, and the votes that you make with your dollars, do they align with those values that you've identified? Or that, because that's like the next part is the actual audit of like, how are you living your values?
Yes, I want to acknowledge that could be very uncomfortable. I know that anytime someone's asked to like reflect on your values and then see if this external world supports that, I want to empathize with anybody who might be listening. It can be uncomfortable at times.
Uh,
There actually is one question that I wanted to ask you before we wrap it up, and it was more so around like your own like habits and your practices. And it could be at the start of your journey, or it could be towards the end. What really inspired that was you started talking about the seven habits of highly effective people. And I know others are always wanting to learn through other leaders or creators or business owners on what materials have really helped them along the way. With you being a small business owner and a woman in business at that, are there any tools, methodologies, modalities that help you stay aligned, connected, and in that frequency to bring change through your products and through your community?
Wow, great question. Yeah, I mean, I talk about education. Like, I am a huge consumer of education, and I am, if you haven't been able to tell already, I'm a very spiritual person. And so I've always invested my time and my energy in learning in things that will help me grow my spiritual practice, which ultimately is my connection to myself, my connection to my heart. And That's either through meditation, getting quiet, getting still. I do a lot of guided meditation. So I like meditations from either Bob Proctor or Dr. Joe Dispenza, going into space, into the darkness. If you can start in, like, I think this is a conscious podcast, so people are probably already a little bit on like down the path. This isn't anything like revolutionary for most of your listeners, but starting with 5 to 10 minutes. But ultimately, like through COVID, when I had all the time in the world, I was doing 1 hour long Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations. And to me, that was like profound life changes happened for me in 2020, going into space with Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I've always been a huge fan of Oprah. I grew up watching Oprah. And so everything and anything that she does, watching her Super Soul podcast, listening to her conversations. I'm always interested in different modalities like breath work, yoga, anything like ecstatic type of like movement and things like that, shaking out the nerves, getting grounded. And I mean, most recently, I think so many people on the planet right now are listening or have listened to the Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, which is so freeing to let people have whatever thoughts that they're going to have or act in whatever way they're going to have, and to let them, and then to let me choose my response to what that's going to be, and let me focus on myself and my own actions. Any of all of the spiritual practices I'm an ambassador for. So anything you've got that can help me again connect to myself, to my heart, to help calm my nervous system and to realign with my intention. I am all ears and all open for any of those modalities and all of them.
Yeah, all the modalities are fantastic. I'm belong alongside you in the sense that I don't focus on one. I dabble in anything and everything. I mean, I've gone as far as learning tarot and oracle and dowsing with pendulums
Oh, yes.
and EFT tapping and all the things. And sometimes you naturally gravitate to one because I think that's your intuition telling you that there's something that you need to learn through that certain modality. So maybe this is an open message that if any of what Desiree had shared speaks to you, lean in and explore whatever that's looking to teach you in that moment.
Yes. Can I share one thing that if anyone has ever seen me like out, they will notice I do this. So I think it's called the body energy test, but you basically figure out what is a yes for you in your body and what is a no. Your body will react in a certain way to something that is true. And then you make a false statement like that, and your body will react to what whenever the answer is false for you. And so for me, if an answer or something is right for me or is a yes for me, my body will go backwards. And if it's a no, my body will fall forwards. Some people it's the opposite, and sometimes it's not even anything close to that, but find it for yourself. And so for me, any decision pretty much that I'm trying to make, I will close my eyes, hold my heart, and I'll ask myself the question again, do I need this pair of shoes? And if my body flies backwards, it's like a full body yes. And then if it's like, for me, if I go forward, then it's a no. Or should I connect with Ashley in the Conscious Podcast? Backwards, full body yes. Literally, I'll be out for dinner and I won't know what to order off the menu. And I'll try to find a little moment to connect to myself and ask, should I get this? And it's either a yes or a no, or should I get this? For me, the more I can connect to my heart is what I try to do.
I love that. I kept seeing these moments like flash through my consciousness of like when I've practiced that body intuitive practice myself. Very similar to what you were saying, that you have these responses that tell you what is your yes. My body, when I ask, moves very similar to a pendulum in the sense that I ask what my yes is and it rocks front and back. And if it's a no, it's side to side. I want to say that after I started doing Kundalini meditation and Kundalini yoga was when that energy in my body actually activated the most. And so it was a lot easier to understand what that energy was trying to tell me in certain moments. Sometimes I find that it even happens without me asking for the answer. It will
Interesting.
naturally happen if I feel like I'm stuck in the mind. The body will almost guide me in a sense of what my soul or what my intuition is really telling me I need in that moment. I also started thinking about the practice of bringing consciousness into consumerism. And Being a clairvoyant, I've never actually publicly said that anywhere. It'll be usually in
Love it.
conversations with the people. The clairsenses tap in so many different ways for me, but when I'm out shopping, if I can't see this image pop in of how that applies into my life and I'm buying out of cerebral energy in my mind, or thinking about social media and somebody else buying it and showcasing it, and I felt that I needed it, if I didn't see the image of how it applies in my own life and how I would integrate it, that's usually a no for me as well.
I love that. I think it's not woo woo. I think we're all intuitive beings, especially as women. But it's again, how can you connect more and get rid of as much of the noise as possible to know what is the outside world telling you and what's actually coming like from within you for yourself.
There's so much spirituality in our everyday lives. And I love that this is like where the frequency of the conversation went, is because I focus on a lot of different topics. There's an influence of spirituality, there's an influence of leadership, but there's also the influence of how can we understand more of the experiences of everyday people, put ourselves in those shoes, and then bring different clarity or guidance on how we can maybe have better experiences or be more mindful. And yeah, I love how this was naturally evolving because it hits on all of it. So Desiree and Voes Co have been featured in Forbes under a sustainability roundup, or businesses that stand behind sustainability. I believe that same narrative was also with Cosmopolitan, if I'm remembering correctly when I looked at it. But then you also were featured on Vogue. And the reason why before we hit record, I wanted to talk about that is because it's very much in my circle of influence, being in PR and marketing for so long. People always think about these high tier media when they think about PR because that's naturally the environment of the PR and media space. But I love to take it so much deeper in the sense that you can utilize high tier media not for the simple fact of getting featured in hopes that it's going to equal sales. PR and media to me is like the most incredible way to understand the story that you have to tell and how that story, your mission, your purpose is going to connect with the right people to build that relationship and that connection, which then equals the sales and the return. And so I would love for you to put the publicist hat on and talk us a little bit about what that experience was like being in such high tier media, especially being a small business. I think that is so inspiring. I think for other people who are also seeking that level of exposure. But I also would love to know, like, how are you able to bring that story to life, especially keeping the influence of sustainability at the core?
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously it's being able to work with an expert in the field. And so I don't have personal experience in PR as much as I'm a marketing person. I'm a great storyteller, but I don't have the relationships or the contacts in PR. And so I got connected with a vegan publicist that shared the same values as me, and knowing the benefits and the impact that having good PR can make, and especially in the early years of wanting to grow my brand and trying to grow a global brand. So I immediately invested in working with Vicky Lanola of Lanola PR. And because she aligns with my values, and because this conversation of sustainability is such a big conversation, timely conversation in all industries, and in particular fashion for sure, we were able to secure these types of opportunities in Forbes, Cosmo. And a big part of that too was also because Vicky runs the vegan fashion show. And so, of course, speaking about community and PR, it's never one thing, one time. It's always a collection of all these different opportunities that kind of add up into this bigger story. And so for us, Vogue was the fact that we were a part of this vegan fashion show, one of the only vegan fashion shows in the world. And so that in itself garnered PR attention, and then being one of the brands showcased in that fashion show. And so really it was the investment in working with Linola PR and working with a vegan publicist that was aligned with my values that got us these great opportunities. And I think, again, being a small brand, it was important because now we do have the credibility and we do have a lot more brand visibility on a global scale, and especially in the way that we want to be positioned. Like we want to be seen as pioneers and leaders in sustainable fashion and things like that.
Yeah, PR will always have a very special place in my heart. When you're a relationship driven person, especially somebody who wants to help tell a really impactful story, PR is the energy, it's the space that is going to help bring that to life. But
Mhm.
PR is also a long game. It is not something that you can do for a short period of time and then see success. PR needs to be thought of almost every single day as your operations would, because PR
100%.
being public relations or people relations, what I used to say in the past, anything that is public facing is PR. At least from my perspective, it's not always media attention or being on podcasts or being interviewed on TV and radio. Your social media can be a part of PR. Your blog articles that you share is PR, but then also the website and your branding is PR. They all have their special, unique exclusivity to them, but it is doing and creating something that is going to attract public recognition.
Yeah, 100%. I can define my brand as much as I want, but really what a brand is how you are perceived by the public, by the people. What are people saying about you? What are people perceiving about you? That's the actual definition of your brand. And so, like you said, all of these elements contribute to how your brand is perceived by the person who is seeing you or buying from you or consuming your brand. And so, yeah, it's again, that's what I was saying. It's not one thing, one time. It's 100 things or 1,000 things over 365 days a year times 10 years. And we all know how things can shift too. Like you can do 100 really great things and you miss on one level and it can throw everything else out. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why staying fluid is very important and crucial in anything, building a brand, building a business, staying fluid, staying adaptable, having room to evolve, but then also honor those setback moments because there's always a lesson or a reminder in all of those experiences.
Yes, definitely.
We could talk probably for another hour, but I see that we're coming up on the time. I wanted to give you one last question to share anything that you think we might have missed in this conversation, and then we'll wrap up. And I will be sure to include all of the ways that people can connect with you and Voes Co. But share the one last message that you really hope to bring to the conversation today.
The message I want to share is around grace. I think we all need a little bit more grace, and I know I do. So I'm giving it to everybody else because I want to give it to myself. And there's so much pressure to be perfect and to not buy that plastic water bottle from the convenience store when you're thirsty. But you know what? Like we're not always perfect all the time. And so again, do your best to be conscious and to be mindful, but be so graceful, give yourself so much grace, because I do believe that we're all trying to make the best decisions that we can in the moment and give yourself grace. Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Desiree, for being a part of this conversation with me today. The frequency, the alignment, all of it from the minute that we connected for the first time to today, we are definitely on the same wavelength, which is very amazing. We were there the whole time. So it was great and such an honor to be in this conversation with you.
Likewise, thank you so much for all that you do to bring these conversations to people, and I'm really grateful.